great ideas, great engineering solutions, and engineering approaches to solve problems is probably one of the most important things in the world. However, it still has to be handed over to people. You got to get people to agree, to buy in, drive change. They got to buy what you're selling, even though you think you're selling the next thing after sliced bread.
Yeah.
Life is about convincing someone that it's good to undertake a certain journey, and that convincing someone is the art of selling. And if you want to sell something to someone, but you want to do that for 20 years with the person keep coming back to you, then you have to deliver on the promises you make. You got to build a long-term relationship and trust. And that included building teams where you bet on people, you coached people, you learned from other people, and then you undertook a journey with them. Climbing Mount Everest is such a phenomenal journey, but it's not as phenomenal as climbing Mount Everest with a bunch of friends.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Experts Uncut. Very excited to have with me Tiger Tyagarajan, the former CEO of Genpact. Tiger, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Simon. Great to be here.
So just some background before we kick off. So Tiger is a senior advisor to multiple professional services and investment firms. He's a board member to several companies. It's a long list. You can check his LinkedIn. He's, as I mentioned, the former CEO of the business services and digital transformation company Genpact. Important point to make here is Tiger helped build and then lead Genpact while the organization was actually part of General Electric. They then spun off as an independent company in 2005 and went public on the New York Stock Exchange in 2007. I've known Tiger for several years. I consider Tiger to be a true expert in leadership, outsourcing market, but also in scaling businesses globally. So very excited and appreciate your time, Tiger. So thank you again for coming on.
Again, Simon, thanks for inviting me. Great to be here. Look forward to our conversation.
Okay. So I like to go back as far as we can, at least as LinkedIn takes us. And career-wise, you started out in sales, or regional sales, at Unilever. Tell us a little bit more about that, how you got that particular role, but also how it may have formed who you are today and how you operate.
Wow, that's taken me a long time back. My first job coming out of my MBA class, which was an MBA program that I went for soon after engineering. So I had an engineering background, MBA, first job. And the first job was basically a sales leader for a company called Cheeseborough Ponds
Okay.
Incorporated, New Jersey-based global company with a branch in India that used to sell personal care products and cosmetic products. And I
Interesting.
joined as the management trainee running one of the states with a team of 7 salespeople. That was my first job. How did I get there from engineering, and what is the connection? Well, I think very early I realized that I don't want to be in a factory as an engineer, and that was a personal choice. And two, I like working with people, and that's what I realized consumer goods and selling and marketing can be. However, I still think the approach to problem solving, or breaking a problem down into its component parts, is still the engineer in me that still approaches everything that way
Mhm.
uh, since then. So that part of me remains as an engineer, but otherwise, I started my life managing teams and doing sales for cosmetics.
Was there a lot of travel involved? Is it international? It was mainly throughout India
No, no,
with
no.
you.
This is for Cheeseborough Ponds, India,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
was one of the global locations of Cheeseborough Ponds Global.
Okay.
And in India, it was divided up into 4 regions: Northwest, East, South. And I joined Bombay, which is where I grew up and lived. And in Bombay, it's composed of 4 states. And I was given charge of what was considered to be the state that any new rookie coming into the company gets, because it's a state that is the largest state, used to be the largest state in India in terms of size of area. Um, Population density not that high, but state-wise much larger. Now it's
Yeah.
changed because the state has got divided into three states.
Okay.
This is the mid 80s, and travel. I mean, those jobs for 7 years. I was in sales for 7 years. 7 years. I basically traveled 22 days a month on the road, all within the states that I owned. And over
Yeah.
time, I kept adding states, and I got bigger and bigger. By the time I left the company 7 years later, it had already become part of Unilever because
Okay.
2 years into my journey, Unilever acquired Cheeseburger Ponds. So now I
Got it.
was part of the Unilever group.
Got
And
it.
as part of the Unilever group, I continued to do sales. And I ultimately ran the southern region, which is the largest region for the company. And I still travel 22 days a month.
Nothing has changed. I love it. And was there some aspect of did that really ingrain your enthusiasm for sales and commercial and just meeting new people? Something that you were passionate about beforehand, or do you think the passion kind of grew through that role?
I guess it'll be fair to say that I had a passion for it earlier through my 5 years of engineering, where I lived on campus with a bunch of new friends I made, who then remained friends for 5 years and beyond. And then my MBA, 2 years, lived on campus, different city, different friends, still a bunch of them friends today. And I realized actually I want to be with people. I want to
Mhm.
spend time with people. And I thought I learned a lot by doing that, particularly the more diverse the people, etc. So that was good. And I came to the conclusion that great ideas, great engineering solutions, and engineering approaches to solve problems is probably one of the most important things in the world.
Mhm.
However, it still has to be handed over to people. You got to get people to agree, to buy in, drive change. They got to buy what you're selling, even though you think you're selling sliced bread, or the next thing after sliced bread. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
So I realized that life is about convincing someone that it's good to undertake a certain journey, and that convincing someone is the art of selling. Um, and if you want to sell something to someone, but you want to do that for 20 years, with the person keep coming back to you, then you have to deliver on the promises you make. You got to build a long term relationship and trust. I realized I actually like those things. And that
Mhm.
included building teams where you bet on people, you coached people, you learned from other people, and then you undertook a journey with them. Kind of like, I actually call it kind of like climbing Mount Everest. Um, I know this would resonate with you given Tenzing, but I've always believed climbing Mount Everest, I actually use this phrase, climbing Mount Everest is such a phenomenal journey, but it's not as phenomenal as climbing Mount Everest with a bunch of friends.
Yeah. So that ties pretty nicely to what you achieved at GE Genpact now. Kind of fast forward from those early days and the enthusiasm around teaming and collaboration, but leadership. What was it like to ring the bell? The New York Stock Exchange in 2007. Is that something early on when you were doing regional sales in India you thought would be possible? What were the emotions on the day?
Oh, wow. You now take me back to 2007. So I did not ring the bell in August 2007. I was on the New York Stock Exchange podium. I wasn't the CEO. I was the basically the guy responsible for commercializing the business. I was based
Yeah.
on New York. My boss, who was the CEO, Pramod. He rang the bell.
Okay.
However, I subsequently rang the bell three times. Um, I forget the dates, but one of them was when we had completed 10 years of being listed, so 2017.
Okay.
Another was just before the pandemic, I think,
Okay.
which is great. And then there was a third one, which I think 2009, somewhere around the financial crisis. So three times I did ring the bell. It feels amazing. It feels pretty
Yeah.
awesome. The most awesome feeling, Simon, is not the ringing of the bell, but um, obviously when you do that, it's an event. It's an event for people in the company. So you invite 100, 200 people from the company to come into the New York Stock Exchange. I don't care how much AI and digital trading happens. the reality is there is something about the floor of the New York Stock Exchange where it used to be done the old way, where people used to trade sheets of paper and put it through, I guess, a chute
Mhm.
where the trading would get recorded. I mean, that still gives you the goosebumps.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and seeing young people in the company participating in that at a very young part of their career and dreaming about, maybe one of them says, I want to be starting a company that is ultimately I'm going to stand there and do this myself.
Yeah.
Or I love being in this company, Genpact, because I'm part of this transformation journey, helping clients, etc. So whatever emotions they go through, it's a place with emotions, and it's a place where you can actually have a meeting of people with emotions gathered around a catalyst event, which is a ringing of the bell, but it's just one event. It's actually the team that comes together.
Yeah. I love that. It's kind of wild to think that I may have been walking the streets in New York, and you were in a building, corralling around some other executive leaders, and we to get to meet, and then ultimately we're recording this later on. But life is a strange thing. Let's put it that way. Um, Also, looking at the my exposure to you at Genpact is, one of admiration. To be honest, I think your leadership style really defined the company, and there are two elements to it that I think a lot of people who have maybe met with you, or clients that have worked with you in the past, or even employees that have worked for you, may or may not have seen. But there were two things that really stood out. One was hard work ethic. Being likely one of the hardest working people at an organization inspires other people to work hard. Like, it's tough to get people to do their best if they don't feel that you're putting in the same level of effort, if anything more. So that was always something that that we saw and appreciated there. The other one was fitness, and I don't think I realized that until the last year, around how much you actually ran on a regular basis. So is that something that you'd always done throughout your career, or kind of running something you took up later in life?
Much later in life,
Okay.
much later. Um, Only in the last, I would say, 12, 13 years.
Okay.
I kind of stumbled on it, metaphorically, stumbled on it. Um, I guess the motivation was the fact that you can measure so many things.
Yeah.
With the rise of fitness apps, health, and the watch and so on. So the moment you could start measuring and measuring progress, I realized that actually I could compete against myself
Hmm.
and keep improving, because I knew that there was no point competing with others, because I'm not going to be able to. So I think that the reality is that as you grow older, you got to be, it's not a surprise. You got to be fit,
Hmm.
and to me, fitness has always been a combination of mental and physical fitness. No one of them is good enough.
Hmm.
Over the last 6 or 7 years, particularly, I've come to the conclusion that it's actually incredibly important to be agile mentally, so that it creates a feedback loop into the body.
Hmm.
Then if you eat well and sleep well and exercise, then that creates a great feedback loop into the mind, and it becomes a virtuous flywheel. I do believe that the flywheel actually is both. I think some people make the mistake of saying, hey, it's only about being fit. No, 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 no. You got to be agile in your mind. You got to keep your mind active. So very important, because that creates a feedback loop. So anyhow, so I don't run as hard these days because it's tough,
Hmm.
but I still half jog. The more important thing is, do I cover enough distance? Is it greater than before? Do I have high enough heart rate? Do I burn enough calories?
Yeah.
And these days, when I do that, I listen to podcasts. So I've become a big fan of podcasts, because when you're doing all of that, you can listen to podcasts and hear some great people talk about some great things.
Yeah. Well, I hope there'll be some people that are on a run or a jog or a speed walk listening to this at some point in the future. Um, so is that then tied back, do you think, to the GE days and kind of your foundation in engineering and Lean Six Sigma, or that's just always been the way that your mind works on the data side?
So on the data side, I guess one could go back to even pre-engineering. The reason I gravitated to engineering was I love numbers, I love
Mm-hmm.
math, I love solving problems, and I started doing that very early in my life. That got me to engineering. Loved that as well. Then, as I started my various roles, I had enough to do, not engineering problems, but problems
Mm-hmm.
with financial and other metrics associated with them. And then Six Sigma kind of created a science around those problem solving methodologies um, that then became teachable, learnable, translatable, applicable across a broad range of problem areas. So I think all of those kind of fed into each other. Um, and then when I realized actually I could do the same thing with data from the body without having to go to a doctor, and I
Mm-hmm.
could measure that continuously in real time. That got me excited,
Okay.
uh, and I said I could do this myself, and I can graph it. And I have 13 years of daily data of
Jeez.
you ask me, and I'll give it to you: heart rate,
Yeah.
calorie burn, steps walked, everything, and I can plot 13-year graphs, daily graphs. It's like a nice up. The thing about it is it has to have an upward trajectory. Here's the interesting thing you'll notice. You'll notice a slow rise and then a sudden jump up. Guess which month the sudden jump up in all metrics happened? I ran more,
January.
I burned more steps, more
Yeah.
time, everything. When?
Well, either January, just the New Year resolutions, or maybe
No,
June with the better weather.
May of 2020.
Oh,
Uh,
I see. Okay,
I
very
was stuck.
yeah,
I was stuck
interesting.
in New
Okay,
York. I was stuck in
yeah,
New York in my apartment, and the only outlet for me, apart from running the company virtually with Zoom, was
yeah,
to step out and and just go out and run. And I just upped my game. I doubled my number of steps. I doubled my distance. I doubled everything. And since then, I've not grown that much beyond that, but I've now held it.
yeah. Do you track sleep quite closely, or do you? Because
Now I
that's
do.
probably the toughest one.
Now I do. I
Yeah.
would say that's a more last 5 to 6 year phenomena.
Okay.
One of my learnings through understanding how the brain works in my podcast was to understand the importance of sleep.
Hmm.
What happens during sleep? What does the brain do? And more research is leading to more breakthroughs in that. Its interconnection with the body, with health, and all of that. Prior to that, I've been a big believer. I used to be a believer that sleep is a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said I don't want to spend a third of my life wasting my time. That's if I live to 90, then 30 years of my life I've wasted versus learning more.
Yeah.
But now I understand that if you wanted to be productive 16 years, you got to sleep
Yeah.
at least at least 6 hours, if not, ideally 6.5, 7 hours.
Yeah.
Uh, but I used to sleep 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's doable. You can maintain it in your 20s and the 30s, but I think beyond that, it tends to you notice it. Are you so on podcasts? Do you listen to Huberman?
You, Andrew Huberman, yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, he's one of the guys, but there are quite a few others um, that I'm a big fan of.
Hmm.
As I said, ranging from basically what I like is conversation formats
Yeah.
where there's this one person who is curious and asks a whole bunch of questions and sometimes goes into a deep rabbit hole with
Hmm.
on a topic with someone who has had great experiences, is an expert, and is a thought leader on that topic. And then, a month later, is talking to someone else on the same topic with kind of similar expertise, but has a different take on it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So if you talk to two people today who are deep AI experts and you tell them, is AI good for the world? You'll get two answers. One, it's amazing for the world, and you get another answer says, no, it's terrible for the world.
Yeah. I had a really interesting conversation with an old friend of mine. He's a professor at University of Cambridge back in the UK, and he studied and then lectured originally in math. Actually, I think you guys would get on very well. And game theory. And I asked him, have we passed the Turing test? Just an open question to see if that's something that he had a certain view on. And he said yes in some aspects, but others no. And the Turing test was never intended to
I
be
agree. Yep.
tested in today's current environment. It was just
Yep.
so that doesn't really apply. But I think it's
Yep.
fascinating how
I've been asked the
those
same
people.
question, and my answer is actually broadly zip code wise very similar. So my
Huh,
view is that the Turing test has been passed,
yeah,
but the Turing test was designed to answer a question that was worth asking at that time.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I think if you redefine the Turing test today, it's not been passed.
yeah,
And the way it was defined is, can can you basically have a conversation that makes the other person feel this is human?
yeah.
Well, that test has been passed, but that's
Hmm.
not a good enough test anymore. You got to have a higher level test, which is, is there reasoning behind it? Can you explain to me why you took that decision? And can you transfer the learning from here into a completely unconnected arena?
Yeah,
So no. So this whole thing about transfer learning and how a child learns is something that has begun to really fascinate me. So I've spent some time in my reading and learning and listening that I've dug into. One of the experiments that someone was telling me is a child, um, pretty young, a year and a half, um, watches mom or dad turn the knob of a door
hmm,
and open the door. Watches it 2 times and starts doing it. Okay, that's good. That's fast learning, etc. No, no, no. Hang on. Then is presented with a cupboard with drawers, chest of drawers, which also has a knob.
hmm,
Doesn't know anything else other than, hey, I just gave this to you. Goes to the knob, turns the knob, and opens it. It's taken the opening of a door and the way the knob works there into a very different arena. You
yeah.
make you make an AI machine do that. Not easy.
Hmm.
Not easy. So there's still some way before AGI happens.
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch, but also the speed at which the software side of the house is evolving, and it's almost a little difficult to keep up. Right, all the experts are
Yeah.
learning daily. It's not a matter of you just find one person to go and chat with, and you learn everything that's the latest in that space. One final thing, just to tie everything together. Um, Services businesses, obviously, within the industry, you've been a leader there. AI is the next evolution of of software, ultimately of automation. People have predicted that it will eradicate the industry. The reality is, like with most, the industry will just evolve and adapt. Right? It's kind of funny to see that when you've been behind the scenes, of that they're just embracing the tool, and if anything, they'll embrace it before anyone else, and then become the leading innovators in that space. Um, what do you think, if anything, will change in the next 10 years in the business process, kind of services and digital transformation industry, that is a step change from pre-COVID and pre the recent evolution in AI.
Well, actually, lots. And Simon, it won't take 10 years. It'll be, I think there's some step function changes that are already happening. So, like all of the technology revolutions, this one will change the way work gets done.
Hmm.
It'll change the way lots of work gets done, and it'll change the way every work gets done, and it'll change it pretty dramatically. The one other big difference between this technology change and all other changes, it's happening much faster.
Hmm.
So, what does that mean? It means that, like all other technology changes in the past, those who embrace the technology and change the way they do things using that technology are going to be successful, and they're going to do more. They're going to capture more value, deliver more value, etc. Those who don't will fail. Now, in a slow change, that success failure trajectory will be slow. because it's a slowly absorbed technology. Therefore, if a business decides not to embrace that technology for the first couple of years and then says, oh my God, I should embrace the technology, then they manage to embrace the technology and jump onto the, okay, I did embrace the technology, though I was 2 years late. This change is so rapid that there is going to be a separation, but the speed of that separation between those who embrace and those who don't embrace is going to be so fast and so quick that if you are behind, it's going to be tough for you to catch up.
Hmm.
So I think this wave of AI driven technology change is going to create in every industry in the world, including business services and technology services, um, a line that you can draw that says this half of the companies embraced the technology, this half that didn't, this half that embraced it have actually grown,
Hmm.
they're now bigger, they do more, they add more value. This half that didn't embrace it, where are they? They're gone, they're dead. So the life and death separation is actually more real now. Um, and the question is not, will AI replace the human? I think the human is going to be replaced by a human who uses AI. The human will be replaced, but it
Yeah.
will be replaced by a human who uses AI. Therefore, if you're a human who doesn't use AI, you're replaced. You're done.
I think last year the questions were from investors specifically to CEOs of what is your strategy for AI, right? Thinking into the future. And most of the responses were we're keeping an eye on how things are evolving, unless,
Yeah.
of course, you're running an AI or technology company. Now it's what have you done? How are you evolving? How are you incorporating it into the work that you're doing? So that's a marked shift change, from 6 to 12 months that I've definitely never seen before.
Yeah.
Um, well, that's fantastic. Okay, well, Tiger, absolute pleasure to have you on, and obviously for everyone to hear a bit about your background and how things have evolved. And excited to keep a track of the additional board positions and advisory work that you do in the future. And yeah, just great to have you on. So I appreciate your time.
Great. Awesome. Wonderful talking to you, Simon. Great questions. And I'm glad I could do this. Uh, Thank you.